The officer thought it was just another routine stop. A woman parked in a no parking zone, nothing out of the ordinary. He didn't ask questions, didn't check IDs. He just saw her skin color and made his decision. With a smirk, he walked up, full of authority, and barked at her to move. When she calmly tried to explain, he cut her off. But when she didn't jump at his orders, his frustration grew. He reached for her arm, ready to show her who was in charge. Then everything changed. She didn't back down. Instead, she reached into her purse, pulled out her badge, and let 3 words hang in the air: FBI Director. The officer's face went pale. His mouth opened, but no words came out. The power dynamic flipped in an instant. And what happened next? Well, let's just say he never saw it coming. The officer took a step back, his confidence crumbling. He glanced at her badge, then back at her face, as if hoping he had misread it. But the cold, serious look in her eyes told him everything he needed to know. He had just made a huge mistake. Silence stretched between them. The busy street around them faded into the background. His hand hovered near his belt, not quite reaching for his radio, but not relaxing either. She could see the panic setting in, his mind racing, searching for a way to undo what had just happened. But there was no undoing this. She finally spoke, her voice calm but firm. "Do you know who I am?" The officer swallowed hard, struggling to find the right answer. But before he could speak, another voice cut through the tension. A bystander had been recording the whole thing. And now the situation was about to get even worse for him. The officer's eyes darted toward the bystander holding up a phone. His face tightened, and for a moment, he looked like he might say something. Order them to stop recording, maybe. But he knew better. The damage was already done. The camera was rolling, and the world was about to see exactly what had happened. The woman, still holding her badge, didn't look away. She had dealt with people like him before, men who let their assumptions dictate their actions. But this wasn't just about her. This was about every time someone had been treated unfairly because of how they looked. And today, she wasn't going to let it slide. More people had started to gather, murmuring among themselves. Some whispered, recognizing who she was. Others just sensed something big was unfolding. The officer shifted on his feet, trying to regain control of the situation. But with every second that passed, control was slipping further from his grasp. The officer's breathing grew uneven as the weight of the moment sank in. His training had prepared him for a lot of things, but not this. He had made a split-second decision, one based on assumptions, and now, standing before him wasn't just another citizen. She was someone with power, someone who could actually hold him accountable. The FBI director lowered her badge but didn't move. She wanted to see what he would do next. Would he apologize, try to justify his actions, or would he dig himself in deeper? The crowd had grown larger. Phones were out, capturing every second. The murmurs had turned into quiet gasps as people realized the gravity of the situation. The officer's backup had arrived, another cop stepping out of a squad car, eyes darting between the two. Then she finally spoke again, her voice steady. "What's your name and badge number?" The officer hesitated. His lips parted, but no sound came out. He was trapped, and he knew it. The officer's throat went dry. He knew he had no choice but to answer, but before he could speak, his radio crackled to life. A voice on the other end, his sergeant, asked for an update on the scene. He hesitated, glancing between the FBI director, the crowd, and his fellow officer. His mind raced. If he admitted what had happened, it could cost him everything. But lying, that could be even worse. Then, before he could respond, the FBI director did something that caught everyone off guard. She reached into her pocket, pulled out her phone, and made a call. "This is Director Carter," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I need internal affairs at my location immediately." The officer's face drained of color. The crowd gasped. His backup officer took an uneasy step back, suddenly unsure whose side he was on. And just when it seemed like things couldn't get worse, another unmarked car pulled up. The door swung open, and out stepped someone the officer recognized instantly, his own commanding officer. And the look on his face said it all. The officer's commanding officer stepped forward, his face tight with frustration. His eyes flicked to the crowd, the cameras, then finally to the FBI director. He knew this wasn't something that could be swept under the rug. The weight of the situation was clear. This wasn't just about one bad decision. This was about accountability. "Officer Reynolds," the commanding officer said, his voice firm, "hand over your badge and gun." The silence that followed was deafening. The officer's hands trembled as he unhooked his badge, his entire career flashing before his eyes. He had spent years in uniform, but in a matter of minutes, everything had unraveled. As he placed his gun in his superior's hand, he turned to the FBI director, searching for some kind of reaction. But she gave him nothing, just a steady gaze that told him this moment had been a long time coming. Then, just as the tension seemed to break, the unexpected happened. The FBI director's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, her expression unreadable. Then she turned to the commanding officer and said, "You might want to take this call." He frowned but took the phone. As he listened, his expression changed from confusion to shock. When he hung up, he looked at the officer. "You're not the only one under investigation." And just like that, the story took a turn no one saw coming. The officer's head snapped up, confusion written all over his face. "What?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The commanding officer didn't answer right away. Instead, he let the weight of the words settle. "There's been an ongoing investigation into misconduct in this department," he finally said. "And after today, you're not the only one who'll be answering questions." The crowd murmured, cameras still rolling. The FBI director watched silently, knowing this was bigger than just one incident. This moment wasn't just about her. It was about the system, about the people who had been ignored for too long. As the officer was escorted away, the bystander with the phone lowered their camera, shaking their head. "About time," someone muttered. The FBI director took one last look at the scene before turning to leave. Justice had started today, but she knew the fight wasn't over. Not yet.